You know, in the Western world, the average life expectancy is about 80 years. That's 80 summers, 80 winters, 80 birthdays, 80 chances to grow, 80 chances to love, and 80 chances to change. That's it. No extensions, no reloads, no extra lives, just time. And you know what the most dangerous thing about time is how invisible it feels while it's passing. So in today's video, I want to talk you through the 8 decades from 0 to 80, and I want to talk in depth about each one. So without further ado, come on, let's jump straight in. So as you can see on this little pie chart of mine, sorry, it's not brilliant, but I'm a visual learner, so I love to have these little diagrams so I can really understand what somebody's talking about. So as you can see on the left-hand side, it's all about losing. And on the right-hand side, it's adding. And that's pretty much what I feel, having been through 50 plus years of my life. I just feel that this is the way that I like to look at life. You're doing all the adding on the first sort of 40, 50 years of your life. And then unfortunately, you start losing on the second part of your life. And I've put this diagram together and I've got it into coloured segments as well. So we'll start off with the bright blue, the baby blue, or maybe yellow, maybe pink for girls. Sorry, I do apologise. I'm a male, so obviously I'm going to be picking blue. And then we start getting into the yellow zone, which we'll talk about. And then finally, those 3 decades at the end, the red zone. That's what I like to call it. It's the red zone. This is where the rubber hits the road. I mean, we'll go into in depth in that anyway. So let's start off 0 to 10 years. Learning to walk, learning to talk, learning your language, learning how to eat, learning how to play, learning boundaries, early relationships. This is what your life is going to be like from the beginning. Some of us remember more than others about what our first 0 to 10 years were like. But this is pretty much, we're learning the basics. We're learning the foundations of what life is going to be all about for us when we get older. So yeah, the usual stuff, you know, learning how to walk and talk and all that sort of stuff. But this is where we're starting to know what's right and what's wrong. And we're looking at boundaries about, you know, what we can do with our bodies, what we can't do with our bodies, what's dangerous, what's safe. And this is where we start forming those early relationships, whether that's with the parents, with the siblings, with your friends that you meet at school. This is so important. And this is such an exciting time of your life. And then you get to that 10 to 20 years. Wow. I can remember so many things from age 10 to 20. It was incredible. You start learning. Education becomes a big part of your life now. This is where you are going to school on a regular basis and you are starting to get into, you know, maybe going to secondary school. And then if you do decide to go further in education, you'll then go to university. But this is where you really start to tax your brain and start to really get a lot of life skills in place now. You've had the foundations from when you were 0 to 10. Now you're really starting to develop those skills and experiences. Your relationships with people are going to start getting a lot more deeper. Either that's with your parents, your siblings, or probably the most important person in your life between 10 and 20 will be your friends, because your friends are your life. They are everything. These are the people that you will tell your deepest, darkest secrets to. You start forming relationships with, you might have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever. And this is where you really start to understand about loyalty and trust and love and all that sort of stuff. And then you start experimenting with things, whether that's drugs, alcohol, and sexual activities. This is where you start to experiment. This is when you start to believe that you're slightly invincible. You've made it. You've grown up. You're now an adult and you can start doing everything. You start to learn how to drive. You start possibly traveling a little bit, and you are invincible. And unfortunately, this is the part where you start questioning your parents. Do you actually need them anymore? How well did they actually bring you up? Because you know everything now, because you're an adult. So, that's sadly from probably about 15 or 16 to 20, you do start doubting whether your parents know what they're talking about and whether they've been good parents or not, because you're a really good judge of this, because you know everything. You're now like person of the world. You've done loads of things in your life now, and you know everything, and your parents don't know anything. But this is an exciting decade for you. This decade is all about confusion and comparison. Probably a little bit insecure about yourself at certain stages. You're definitely curious, and you want to explore. You want to venture out. You're searching for acceptance before you understand what your self-worth is. And then we move on to your 20s and your 30s. This is the part of your life that becomes the building part of your life. This is where you're building your career. This is where you're now starting to think about, moving out of the family home and having your own house. You're possibly starting to have all these more deeper, meaningful relationships now, where, you met a partner and you're thinking about settling down together and possibly having children, if that's what you want to do. And this is it. This is your building part right here. You're now traveling a lot more. You want to see the world. I mean, you only live young once, and this is the part where you really want to sort of push the boundaries, maybe with somebody, maybe with friends, maybe with a partner, maybe you've got young children. This is where you want to start traveling around and seeing all the places that you've heard about and seen on TV. Now you want to go and see it for yourself. This is also the part where all your friends are all in the same position. So you can probably relate to this, but this is, I don't think I ever went to more weddings in my life than between 20 and 30. It seemed like every other week I was having a wedding. It was absolutely crazy. Or I was at a wedding. It was so expensive, but actually looking back on it, it was brilliant as well. I mean, going on about 20 stag do's over a 3 or 4 year period was unbelievable, let me tell you. Brilliant. So it was fantastic. But you're now also understanding about responsibility and consequences for your actions. This is the part of your life as well where you think you're invincible, but then suddenly you're having to deal with a bit of failure coming in, whether it's in your relationship, or that might be the failure of a breakdown with your relationship with your parents. It might be a failure at work where you've fallen out with somebody and you've had to leave work or something like that, or you didn't pass a particular test, you didn't make it. This is where you have to deal with that, and with that also comes massive pressure. It is absolutely huge at this stage. Between 20 and 30, there's a lot of pressure going on. You're still young in the marketplace in terms of work, and even though you might have that sort of attitude of everything, you don't. You're still learning. They class you as in the UK we say wet behind the ears. And that's exactly what you are. You think you know everything, but the reality is you're still learning and building. And, certain things and dreams and aspirations that you have, that's going to take discipline. You're now learning that. That's just the reality of what it is. But, this is all a learning curve. And again, you're in your sort of like 0 to 30 years. You're learning, you're understanding, you're experiencing, and you're navigating your way through these choppy waters of life. Again, it's at this stage that you probably don't need your parents anymore. It's like, thanks very much. Yeah, okay, you did an okay job, or brilliant job, whatever. Thanks very much. I'm a fully grown adult. I've actually got my own family now. I'm fine. I don't need help. Thank you so much. But then you'll have that day or that week or whatever where you're like, oh, actually something's broken down in the house, or my car doesn't work. You know what? I think I'll just get Dad to come around and sort it out. Mum, is there any chance you can come around and do a bit of babysitting? Because I'm really struggling here and I'm like feeling a bit down and stuff like that. So yeah, you pick and choose when you want to to have that help with your parents. But that's just the way it is, and I think parents understand that as well. And it's also at this stage where you want bigger the better. This is where you're, like I said, you're feeling a bit invincible at times, and you're like, right, okay, look, my career's on track here. I'm earning a bit more money. I want the biggest house I can get. I want the swap my car. I want a really, really nice car. And it's all about accumulating, adding to your lifestyle, whichever way that is, adding experiences, going on the best holidays, starting to, like I say, buy all those little treats and things that you've always dreamt about having. And bigger the better. That's the way that most people think when you're that age. And also, just to add a little sideline here, amazing health. This is the point when you are absolutely in peak condition. You are like, I could do anything. If I want to run a marathon, if I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, whatever it is, you are ready to take on anything. You're invincible, basically. So then we move on to the 30 to 40 year bracket. This is interesting because this is where it's all about, again, expansion and stability. You're building here. You're building your wealth. You're building your career. You're building your family and your business. You're building your home or homes. You're starting to think about, a legacy, and you're starting to have those long-term visions about, wealth. And again, you are just at this stage now where you've got quite a bit of life experience now. You're starting to get very mature in your way of thinking and your decision making, and you've got that emotional intelligence and self-awareness and perspective. You've got a little bit of patience there as well. You're starting to look at things and go, well, I don't need your approval because I'm pretty sure of myself now. You stop, what's the word? You stop chasing alignment. You basically start doing what you want to do when you want to do it. Okay. And your health's pretty good at this stage. You're feeling great. You're now having that family. You're bringing the kids up. You've got that increased wealth. Maybe, your career's taken off and you're earning some really good money, but you're also spending it as well. This is the point where you're like, if you're in this bracket and you're listening to me, this is the point where you really, really need to start looking to the future and start looking at those investments, start those ISAs, and, start maybe putting some money aside in, savings accounts, or start investing in property. Or this is the point where you really need to start thinking about the future and not about the now. What this decade's taught me, and probably would teach you if you're in this part of your life, or you may be through this part of your life, is not everything mattered. Okay, not everything belongs. It just doesn't. It's just the way it is, and not every door is yours to open. And what I mean by that is, yes, you'll get all these opportunities, but you don't have to chase every single door that opens up. Oh, I'll go in here. Oh, no, I'll go in here. I'll go in here. Yes, be experimental. Yes, be adventurous. But you've got that, like I said, that emotional intelligence now where you're really starting to understand and learn how life works, and you're confident in your decision making because you've made mistakes in the past. Okay, you now learned from those mistakes, and you're now a lot more confident in that area. And then we get to the 40 to 50 year old bracket. This is where you start getting that sort of balance in life. This is where you start having those little health issues kicking in. You start being making yourself aware of getting up in the morning. You're not so full of energy anymore. You're starting to slow down a little bit. Those creaky bones are starting to kick in again now. This is where you start to realize that things are slowly but surely deteriorating. Sounds horrible, but that is the reality, and you need to be aware of it if you are in this bracket. Okay, yes, you can still run and go to the gym and do all these fitness things and whatever you want to do, but you now need to be aware of what your body is capable of doing and what it's not capable of doing. You're not 20 anymore. You're now 40 or 50. Okay, your body can't do a lot of the things that it used to do. Your brain tells you it can, but your body doesn't. And this is where you start to realize that that's the issue. And you're now starting to realize what life is really all about with these life experiences. You're now starting to think about what the future is, and things like time over money starts becoming a little bit more important, and purpose over performance. It doesn't have to be perfect as long as you're doing it. Like depth over noise. That's another thing I like to think about. It's, you're not shouting from the rooftops about how amazing you are anymore. You're just quietly taking a step back, letting other people talk. You just listen. You've now understood that when you're in a room full of people, the biggest advantage you will have is to close your mouth and just listen and take in what everyone else is saying. Okay? And this is where your identity really does replace your ego. Okay? And this is where you're starting to totally understand who you are, where you are in life, and what do you want to do going forward. Unfortunately, and you'll see it here, this is the time when you're starting to experience deaths on a more regular basis than you have before. So this is when you start losing grandparents. You possibly might start losing your parents at this stage, maybe aunties, maybe uncles. Unfortunately, it's going to happen, and the more and more frequent they become, it will be in this period. And you're still traveling, you're still wanting to go and see all these places that you haven't been to yet. You possibly at this stage might have that career change. You're starting to wonder, what is going to happen to me in 5 or 10 years' time? Those years beforehand, that didn't even come into question. You didn't even bother to think about it. But now you're in your 40s, you're in your 50s, between 40 and 50. You're now starting to think, do I really want to do this for another 10 or 15 years? So you might have that career change, or you might even slowly start thinking about retiring. Would you believe at 40 or 45, you might start thinking about, actually, I've accumulated a certain amount of wealth. I'm doing okay. I'm going to start pulling back a little bit. Your income at this stage will have increased as well. As I say, you've been building on your investments. They're all starting to, trickle in nicely now. And you might start having that little bit of passive income coming in, which is great. And then we get to the stage that I am in right now. You're 50 to 60. And this is where it starts getting really, really serious in life, because this is the time when, yes, you've got the wisdom, you've got the experience, you've got the perspective, you've got the emotional control, you've got clarity on what life is all about. You stop reacting to things and you just start responding to things. You're at the stage now where, you're maybe not providing as much as you used to, but maybe guiding. This is the time when people are coming to you now going, hey, Anton, what do you think? I need your advice on this. You are now one of those father figures that people come to and say, hey, you know what? You've got life experiences. I want to learn from you. You have that. It's like that mentor type of phase, that leadership, that sort of legacy phase. That's where you are at this stage. The flip side of that is, yes, other people might look at you like that, but inside, a lot of the time, 50, 60-year-olds, a lot of people that I talk to, they're all my age. And some of them are tired. Some of them are confused. and we start having that little bit of regret about things that we never achieved or never did when we were younger. And we're now looking and thinking, oh, I'm not sure I could do that anymore now. Maybe more physically than mentally, but it's those decisions in life about investing in, I don't know, property or should I have gone down that career path instead? Or, did I really was it really necessary for me to fall out with that person and lose my job and then move to something else? And if I'd have just shut my mouth and stayed there and things would have been a lot better, you start doubting and having a few regrets. This is where your hair loss, you've seen me. I've hardly got anything up top now. This is where you start losing it. And this is why I've got losing on this side. You start losing your hair. This is the time when you go to the dentist and your dentist starts tutting when your mouth's open and starts saying, oh, really, really need to start, doing a few things here. You need a root canal. You need fillings. You need... Oh, there's so many different conversations or so many scenarios that happen with your body in this stage. You start having your health issues increased. This is the point where you really, really, really need to start taking note of all your health problems now. Go and get checked regularly. You have that, checking those moles on your body that are quite new or whatever it is. Ladies checking your breasts, having those mammograms on a regular basis. Guys checking testicles. This is the point when we really, really, really need to start seriously considering how long we want to live on this planet from this day forward. So if you are a smoker, or if you drink too much, or if you're not exercising, or if you've got a really bad diet, you're going to change. This is the time you have to do it right now, from today. Unfortunately, again, we are on the losing side of this pie chart, and this is where, sadly, we definitely start losing grandparents and even parents, and possibly siblings. It's horrible to say this, but I'm starting to experience it now. As I say, grandparents are all gone, my parents have gone, and you start losing cousins and aunties and uncles and things like that, and that is just part of life, and unfortunately it is just the way that we have to deal with it. I've said to you, we panic about the future now. We're starting to doubt whether we actually was it necessary to buy all that fancy cars and designer clothes and go on those 5-star holidays when we were younger? Oh, I don't know. You start doubting all that stuff now. This is where you have that empty nest syndrome. This is where your children, who you've brought up and nurtured for the last 20 years or whatever, 25 years, this is where they're like, thanks, really appreciate everything you've done, but we're out of here. We've got our own lives to lead now. So your children now are leaving for university, or they're leaving to buy a house, and they've met somebody and they're considering getting married and all that sort of stuff. And then grandkids come along. And this is the part where, your life is completely changed now. You're now having to deal with grandchildren. Your job is, you either are at the end of your career, or you're starting to come to the end of your career. This is the point where, those awkward conversations creep in with your employers, your bosses, things like that. And this is where you really, really are starting to doubt whether, you want to carry on, because you got younger people coming into the company. They're now your boss. They're now questioning your work ethic, or your ability to do the job in the time frame, and you're questioning everything about yourself and your career. And this is the time when, as I say, a lot of people are like, you know what, enough's enough. I'm out of here. I've thankfully saved enough money, or I'm happy with what I've got financially, and I just want to leave. So that's what it is, 50 to 60. And, your attitude changes. Your attitude will now become, I have X amount of years left. What can I do on this planet until I'm no longer here? And that's like leaving a legacy. you know, for your children and your family and things like that, you now start thinking about, you know, wills and, you know, maybe, you know, handing a few things over here and there, you know, and that's what this phase is all about. And also, I just want to add one more thing in the 50 to 60. If there are things that you haven't done and you've got regrets at this point, this is the bit where you start going, okay, time's running out. I need to get this sorted out. I want to do this. I want to do that. Go and do it. And then we get to the 60 to 70. Yes, no, I'm not there yet, but it's creeping up very, very quickly. And this is the, you know, point where I imagine we'll be dealing with going to a lot of funerals. I will be dealing with a lot of death in my family. You're starting to, you know, potentially have work colleagues and friends that maybe haven't spoke to for a bit, and then you get that phone call to say they passed away. You know, your career is pretty much ending at this point. You're now starting to declutter. You know, you're downsizing possibly properties. You know, why would you? You're there with your partner possibly. You might be on your own. Why would you want to live in this big house? And this is the time when you need to sort of declutter and maybe talk about downsizing. And again, that's where you start having conversations with your children. And and I'm sure they've got their theory on what they want you to do. And then health. You know, that's another one. You know, this is the time where your health is seriously, you know, in the red zone. You know, you really, really need to pay attention. You cannot do the things you used to do 20 years ago. You just can't. And yes, people have that, you know, new lease of life. And, you know, listen, we hear about it all the time about that, you know, 80-year-old granny who starts weightlifting. And yeah, that's incredible. Fantastic. But if you have looked after yourself, then, you know, you can still do a lot of the things now, but health is a massive issue at this stage. But look, the good thing is you'll have a lot more time to travel. You'll have a lot more time to invest in your hobbies that you've always wanted to do. Your attitude about life is completely different now. You are looking, you know, towards the, you know, the latter end of your life, and you're now starting to think about, as I say, how do you want to leave life? You know, what have you got left to do? You're a lot more relaxed about things. You're a lot calmer. You know, we're talking sort of, you've got 60 years, you know, under your belt now of life. That's a long time. So we now start to enjoy what's left. And this is the point where I don't want to be where I am 60, 65 years of age and I've got regrets. I don't want any regrets. I can't think of anything worse than being in a nursing home or being in a chair somewhere in the corner of the room, and your family are there, younger family, your kids and their kids and all that sort of stuff, and you're sitting there going, oh, I just really wish I'd have done this, and I really wish I'd have done that. I don't want to have any regrets. That's why I'm taking advantage of doing things now in my 50s that I'm still able to do, travel and do loads of sports and do loads of hobbies that I've always wanted to do. I've still got loads to listen. I want to learn how to play the guitar and, you know, learn a language. So I need to hurry up with some of those things. But that's where we are. And, you know, you are measuring life differently, not by success, but by contribution. You know, what have you achieved in your life? You know, it's not now by, you know, how much money you've got or anything like that, but it's more how influential have you been? You know, how you know, are you impacting on people's lives now? Because they are looking up at you now as, you know, as one of those, I like to say, village elder, and you're now, you know, full of wisdom, full of wise words and guidance. You know, you're not, you know, yes, people might look at your achievements, but it's really the, you know, what meaning you have now in their lives, and you become like a storyteller, like a guide or a teacher or something like that, or a legacy builder. That's where you are in your life right now. And then finally, and sadly, and I'd like to think that we'll all live past 80, but the reality is that you know, from 80 onwards, you know, if you are still here, then, you know, life's going to be a lot more uncomfortable for you. You're going to start having health issues, and, you know, things are going to deteriorate more rapidly at this stage. So I like to think that between 70 and 80, we've still got enough energy and vitality, and, you know, we've still got what we call our marbles, so we still can think clearly and straight. And this is the point where you've got that decade to get everything done, get all your affairs sorted out. Your parents have gone. You possibly are losing your siblings at this stage, or your partners. You know, your health is now your wealth. It is your main source of life. And you now can reflect back on life. You can look at what you've done, the good old days, the good times, and each day now going forward is going to be so special with your family. So if you have had family feuds with your siblings or your friends, or, you know, even your kids, you know, this is the time where you really, really need to rectify that, because you want to leave this planet having done the best you can possibly do. And, you know, your memories now will be not how much money you earned in, you know, 24 years ago in that particular year, but it's all about who you loved and who you're with. And this is where time stops being something that you chase and becomes something that you appreciate. But here's the truth nobody likes to say. Most people just unfortunately don't even live to 80 years. They exist, they survive, they repeat, they distract, they cope, they settle, and they postpone. They trade time for comfort and meaning for safety, purpose for approval. And one day, they just wake up old. Time is the only currency that you can't earn back. You can replace money, you can rebuild careers, you can repair relationships, you can recover losses, but you can't recover years. So ask yourself, are you living or are you waiting? Are you growing or are you repeating? Are you building a life or are you just escaping one? Are you becoming or are you just aging? If the average life is 80 years, then life isn't long. It's precise, and every year matters. Every season matters. Every choice matters. Every relationship matters. Every risk matters. Every day matters. Because time doesn't shout, it whispers. And one day, it stops. So use it well, my friends. Thanks very much for watching. I know this is quite a long video, and I really hope that it brings some purpose and comfort and meaning to where you are in your journey of life. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel. Let's talk about life with Anton. And if you want to share any of your thoughts or experiences about how you're dealing with life, at what stage of life you're at, obviously just put a comment below. I'd love to hear any of your stories. And yeah, I'll see you in another video. Take care. God bless. Bye.